Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia well backing. That is the Institute for Energy Security. They're also predicting some 3 to 5% reduction at the pump. So definitely monitor the figures and bring you some updates. Let's stay on the economy because the opposition National Democratic Congress is asking government to further cut down on its expenditure, especially in terms of the size of government. Well, Ghana is turning 66, but we're still at the doorstep of the IMF begging for a bailout. In a view to get his thoughts on national development, I caught up with the national chairperson of the opposition National Democratic Congress, who opined that the NPP administration has to do more to deal with our debt overhang, plus demonstrate to the people by cutting down the size of government. Chairman Johnson Asiedu Nketia, thank you for talking to JoyNews. The last time we had a conversation, you called that it was quite a tough time for you, but you're looking very relaxed now. I'm sure you're settling in your new post as the chairperson of the largest opposition party, the NDC.
Thank you very much. It's always been a pleasure being with you. And I'm trying to settle down, as you have said. And so I haven't granted many interviews at all after the election. So it's an opportunity to talk to the media about the second or third time after the election. I've always been on the ground trying to do things that will make us succeed rather than spending time in the media. That's why I miss the media work, but I still think that because of the new situation, I have to be doing
Here's a personal question, though. Do you miss your former role as the General Mosquito himself? Now you're chairperson of the party. Many say you would have to take a reserved seat and look at things unfold. Has a lot changed for you?
Well, I'm still General Mosquito. And to tell you what, General Mosquito was not given to me because of my position as a General Secretary. It is a title I earned in Parliament even before contesting to become General Secretary. So, never mind, viewers. You can continue calling me General Mosquito.
The General is still the General.
But again, yes, I enjoy talking to the media, and you'll bear testimony that I rarely turn down interviews unless I'm under serious time pressure. But now I need to step back and allow my successor to also come up and work. I don't want him to be always under my shadows. That's why I've laid back a little to allow him to also perform.
Okay, let's talk about national development, because Ghana is 66 now. For the very first time, the people of the Volta region hosted this national event. Coincidentally, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, was there a few days before the celebration of the national event. And he started off by raising some concerns about what is supposed to be national for all of us, a national celebration as it's supposed to be, Ghana's Independence Day. He's raising concerns that the celebration is increasingly becoming a partisan affair. Do you share the same concerns?
Yes, I very much share that concern. It is not the national celebrations alone. In fact, it has now descended into practically all social gatherings to which the president or the vice president is invited. I have complained about even funerals or festivals.
Even state funerals?
No, not state, private funerals to which the president or vice president or has been invited to. I don't know whether it is a policy, a national policy, but some way, somehow, efforts will be made to, if you like, edge out other participants. Yes, I've had, cause to complain at some of the key festivals, in the country to which President Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia had been invited. Of course, that was before these presidential primaries.
Right.
I don't want to be talking as if.
Yes, yes.
It was
so you're putting that in context, that was
in
even
context, before the
contest.
presidential primaries. He happens to be our only surviving former president. So when NDC is being invited to a function, they will invite him, and then we also go together, around our former president. The same way as President Kufuor attending a function will attract the presence of, his party executives. And so I've attended about 2-3 festivals where you realize that the master of ceremonies would intentionally be doing things that are clearly disrespectful to the former president. There was an occasion where you go to the festival and then the original program that has been drawn will provide for some address by former president, some address by Vice President Bawumia, and so on. Some way, somehow, in the course of the program, there will be insistence that if they allow former President Mahama to speak, then the Vice President will leave the function.
Really?
And it actually happened in Boko at a festival where I was present. I personally attended a funeral also in Obuasi. The funeral of a former colleague, member of parliament. And so the children came to invite me and the family. I attended. And even getting the opportunity to announce my donation was a problem. Whenever people get up to go and say, look, NDC, the General Secretary, blah, 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 and they call, some dancing group to be singing and all that. So we kept being delayed as if they wanted to urge us out to leave the place in anger or so on. So apparently it all has something to do with the applause when I attend festivals, even those that are organized by the...
So there were lots of people cheering you?
Yes, right. So they will not allow even the donation to take place. We sent somebody to go and announce our donation. The person stood there for more than 30 minutes. The MC would not allow him to do what he had to. And we had to leave for another funeral. So at some point, I got up myself, breached all protocol, and went and snatched the microphone from the announcer. And I told him that we are here because my former colleague, member of parliament, passed, and his family invited me. Right. I am not attending an MPP function. So if I have to donate, I don't need the permission of his MPP functionaries to announce my donation. And I will not walk away with my donation in anger, because when there is death, it will be carried by the family. So that is just to tell you that even these minor events, they have tried to politicize them. So I have watched Farmers' Day being politicized, National Independence Celebration being politicized. During President Kufuor's time, I persistently attended Farmers' Day celebrations throughout President Kufuor's region, because they will be organized as national functions. But now things have changed. Then so if you attend, it's like you are attending an MPP function. So it makes it difficult for people to attend it as a national function. So they are gradually losing its significance.
But the last opportunity that arguably you had admitting the president would have been his address in Parliament during the State of the Nation.
Yes.
When he was moving out, there was the exchange of pleasantries.
Yes.
Did you take the opportunity, for instance, just to express your concerns to maybe the president or some of his appointees who are your good friends in government?
They are all my good friends, but they won't listen. They won't listen. As for advice, I've never denied them of my advice. Even if I don't meet them, I'm sure they have been listening to my radio programs and the type of advice I've been given. And at social events, when we meet, I always will express my frustration about how things are going on. So, yes, but in the Parliament last week, we didn't talk about that. He congratulated me on my election as the national chairman.
But you all turned up anyway. I saw former President John Mahama there together with the leading figures of the NDC. Was it a decision to go, irrespective of the fact that these things are happening at national events?
No, but Parliament, nobody can urge us out of Parliament. So we had to go. And so we went. And it's good we went because at least we had a lot of comic relief.
Comic relief?
Yes, from some of the addresses. At some point, I was wondering whether it was a State of the Nation address or some history lesson or something, you know.
Okay, let's brush through some of the things the president says, for instance. You were there when he said that his government has built, for instance, more roads than any other government is in the history of the Fourth Republic.
Yes.
What was going through you when he was making such a statement?
Well, I felt that maybe he has been misled into saying some of the things that he has been saying. I've been in government before, and we, together with Dr. Kobranche, have been in charge of a sector before. And when a presidential address was being prepared, the sectors would send the inputs. So, to be fair to the president, he may not personally know everything else that is contained in the document. So, it is easy for his ministers to mislead him. And so, we felt that some of the things he said were not born out of the facts. But we won't blame him alone. We blame the system. So I remember this is not the first time he mentioned this road thing. He had mentioned it, I think, last year.
Yeah, last year as well.
And my response, that year he was saying
over
11,000 kilometers. And so I said, I'm not sure the president has the faintest idea about how the length of 11,000. And I said that flying from Accra to London and back, that is what he's talking about. And he claims he has constructed roads. So when you put together, can link Accra and London with a dual carriage. Because in and out
would have been that 11,000 that the president is talking about. And you don't believe that?
Clearly, this is.
He says the evidence is on the ground. He's put out a document to prove his words.
This is not the first time I'm looking at MPP documents. I have read a lot of MPP documents. Even now, they continue sending cooking things and presenting to Parliament. We made this point a long time ago when this economy was running into crisis. We kept saying that they were cooking the books. You guys didn't understand that. If you had taken an interest in what was happening and we had stood up to maybe shame and stop them, we wouldn't be where we are now. They were cooking the books to look like they were performing wonders and creating the impression that economy was the best performing economy. And so we say they are cooking the books. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Now all of a sudden, the bubble has burst. And we are where we are now. We are a junk state. If you compare our status with an individual, it is like undischarged bankrupt person. That's
the level we've gotten to.
Yes, that's the level we've gotten to. You know, in the mercantile law and others, as an individual, you can get to a point where you can't pay your debts. And so, but you still feel that you have the right to live and to avoid the harassment of your debtors and so on. So you apply to be declared bankrupt. And once they declare you bankrupt, the law protects you. So none of your debtors can come and harass you for repayment. But what you get into is that you lose your voting rights because you are less of a human being. Then somebody else is appointed to run your life for you. If there is any income generating venture that you have running, that income will go into the hands of another person, like if you like your headmaster.
Right.
Will be thinking for you and doing everything for you. So if you are an undischarged bankrupt person, you can't vote, you can't contest for elections. There are a whole lot of things. If you look at the 1992 Constitution, there are a whole lot of things that you cannot do because you yourself have declared that you have messed your life up to a point that you cannot responsibly organize your life. So another person is asked to organize your life for you. As a country, that is where we are.
But the president has been justifying that, and just to paraphrase him, he says we've not been reckless in our borrowing, quote and unquote. Those were the words of the president. He believes that there's evidence to back whatever he's borrowed the money for.
He's not justifying. He's denying the reality. He's still either staying in the state of denial, or is somebody who still think that he can continue to mislead people because of his powers of oratory. Say sweet things about a bad situation. But I always keep saying that rose called by whatever name will still smell sweet. You know that. So, and if you decorate a donkey, it can never turn into a horse. It will still remain an ass. So if we had faced the truth and the reality much earlier on, when it was dawning on us, we would have avoided the worst coming. But we keep on denying. And so the situation continues getting worse. And I'll blame people who knew about the situation and for one reason or the other decided not to speak because for fear of harassment or, you know, because of one inducement or the other, they decided, oh, let's keep quiet and mind our business. Let's keep quiet. That's where we are now. You understand? So there were times when we were complaining about this, and people would be saying, oh, but we are not politicians. It is you who should complain. We are not politicians. You remember my caution when I was talking to the media,
right,
that now you think that it is our responsibility. We will come to a point where you feel the heat no matter which profession you are engaged in. When they were doing this haircut, did they identify and isolate investments made by media men? We are all inside. Did they identify and isolate investment made by the clergy or anybody? We are all inside. So we are coming back to Plato, and Socrates.
And I recall speaking to you somewhere last year.
Yes.
You were making some recommendations, and as part of it, you called on government to, for instance, cut down on expenditure.
Yes.
I recall that point vividly. Yet, the president has had the opportunity to do a reshuffle. He's done that. And what we see is that the number is either being maintained or there's a little add-on. The NDC says that it will not back that process. Don't you feel that you may stifle his government some more and derail what's already, as you're terming, being run into the ditches?
I'm happy you are referring to that interview.
Right.
If you remember, I made 2 strong recommendations. That one, there seems to be lack of trust between government and the governed. So if we are to get out of the mess, there must be changes and new people brought on board. And that if we allow the same people, finance minister, chairman of economic management team, and other people who are responsible for this mess, if we then say that we are professing solutions and we are going to rely on these same people who created the mess in the first place to take us out of the problem, they have lost the confidence of the people. So it is going to be extremely difficult. So the president should work at that loss of confidence. That's the beginning point. Otherwise, we cannot make progress. It was way, way before his 80 or so plus MPs came to repeat what I had warned about more than 6 months earlier.
Right.
Then I made the second point that government running a country can be seen as running a small business. If it is a manufacturing company, you have a type of resources that go into production of the items that you will be selling. And those are the items you sell to make profit to sustain the business. Now, then you have overheads. That is the monies you spend on management and other things.
Operational costs.
Operational costs and other things. So if you get to a point where the overheads, the money you spend, you pump into overheads, far exceed the money that goes into production on the production floor, then that company is in trouble. I mentioned it. Nobody listened. When you come to the running of government, you have the productive sector. You have the workers and the other functionaries down there who actually move the economy. And then you have what I will call the politicians and the others.
And the appointees.
Appointees, judiciary, whatever. Running the elections and all those things could be considered as overheads. So if you come to a point in time where the overheads far exceed the investment that goes into the generation of income to run the country, you are in trouble. And in our peculiar situation, you see, we are having a youth bulge economy.
Right.
As we sit, I believe that the under 18 or 18 or maybe under 20
It's far more.
Far more than any segment of the population. Then besides that, you also have over 60 who are retired. So the burden of both the youth who are not employed yet and the retirees and those in active population who cannot find employment all constitute a burden that will be carried on the working population. So if you are not careful, and with the working population carrying all this burden, you go and add overheads big government, several ministers, increasing number of DCs, increasing number of presidential staffers, appointees of whatever sort, appointing chief executives of ports that are at the design stage, like Keta Port and the others. Establishing structures in spite of our very excellent structures for decentralization. You go and superimpose on the decentralized structures development authorities, spending money on keeping them in office and so on. You can only land where we have landed. So the president and his government has been extremely reckless. And I felt ashamed. I was almost hiding my face when our president declared openly that they have not been reckless. If you have not been reckless and you were borrowing responsibly, where we are, is that how responsible borrowing leads people? Is that where responsible borrowing leads people? You borrow to a point where you cannot repay the loans, and you are still claiming that you didn't borrow recklessly.
So you were concerned about the overhead, but some say that the president was simply, in this latest set of appointees, his name, replacing some of the persons who've left government. For instance, take a look at the Trades Ministry. It became vacant. The Agri Ministry became vacant. And so the president, for instance, was appointing these new nominees to fill some of these spots. But you've asked your MPs, for instance, not to support the process. What's accounting for that decision?
We have never minced words about the size of government. And indeed, the MPP itself, supporters, are worried about the size of government. Because if you have come to a point where, as a country, you cannot pay your debts, and you are going out there asking for debt forgiveness, at least you have a responsibility to cut down on your own expenditure, the expenditure that led you into that crisis. So if you do that, you would have demonstrated the willingness and the capacity to solve your own problem. So it is in order, when you appeal to outsiders to help you, to implement the solution. But you are in this mess, and you are blaming everybody apart from your own self. You operated a bloated government, and this continued to live in ostentation, hiring jets and so on, to go and borrow money from prime ministers who ride bicycles to supermarkets. And you are flying in jets where you have facilities of bathing in the air. Don't you think that those countries you are approaching, the monies you are going to borrow or you want forgiven, they were monies contributed by their own taxpayers? And if their leaders have decided to lead or live the way you are living, do you think that there will be any money left over for you to go and borrow? So you must demonstrate that, yes, Ghana is in crisis. So when we are in crisis, maybe this number of ministers can run the system.
Chairman,
so
you are saying will not back down on that, of course, directive you've given to your MPs not to support this new
in the interest of the nation.
But these are critical sectors. Agri, for instance, you have trade, you have an experienced hand. As of course, you met in Parliament, I'm sure, Katie Hammond, who's being nominated, for instance, by the president. These are critical sectors, you agree?
It is not about the competence or otherwise of the persons involved at all. It's about the numbers. We are saying that our national budget and the circumstances we are in now, we need to cut down costs. And the way to cut down costs is to reduce the number of ministers. Leadership is about setting priorities. You can look at the human resource available to you. And then you choose the best 50, 60, or 70 that will do the work. Those you consider to be non-essential in the time of crisis like this, you let them go home.
Is that what they would take for you to accept these new nominees?
Well,
for instance,
we have said reduce the number.
Okay.
And you are not reducing it. And some people have resigned, effectively reducing the number. Why should we cooperate with you to still fill those vacancies to bring us back to where they were before the resignation?
So what
if
will
we
it take
think
the
that
party?
the number is too large. So Katie Hammond is my friend. Many of the appointees, some of them fantastic people. But it's not about their competence or lack of it. It's about the number of ministers. So let the president come and say that, well, we like Katie Hammond, we like this man, we like that man. They are good material. I'm reducing the number by sending off A, B, C, D, maybe 10, 20.
Okay.
So allow me to take these 5. Then we are in good business.
So on that basis, you would allow
anything
your
that
MPs
will
to support
reduce,
that?
anything that will go to further the national interest of reducing number of ministers, we will fall for it.
Do you have an ideal cutoff point or number that, well, we should be dealing with at this point?
No, why should we be advising the president when he has shown that he's impervious to advice?
Well, I'm asking because you've said that you want the numbers to further go down.
You said you are in crisis.
Right.
So the first thing for you to do is analyze your own expenditure.
Okay.
And see what jobs can be combined, what appointees we can live without in the time of crisis, which are the critical appointees that we need to maintain to lead the charge and lead us out of this crisis. Okay. It is the responsibility of government to look at that one and make a determination. But if the government still insists that the exact number of ministers I have, they are okay, when they, in the opinion of Ghanaians, the government is over-bloated, we are not going to be responsible for partly responsible for the bloating. If we have the opportunity, we will help the government to cut down costs, because that is what we think is in the national interest.
Are you not worried that you may not have the parliamentary numbers to support that? Be it when we have a situation where the committee report is laid before plenary. Are you not scared that as the NDC you may not have the numbers to block these new nominees from going through?
Not at all. You know, we are saying that we believe that the government is bloated. So we will not support the government to continue the bloating. If all our MPs vote to support that position, whether the people get passed or not is none of our business, because we have responsibility to Ghanaians to prove to Ghanaians that we have not contributed to the mess. We did all that is in our power to stop it, but the numbers we have could not continue the battle. That is different from NDC getting up and voting to approve those ministers and come outside Parliament to say that the government is bloated.
You don't want to be a part of this?
No, because we believe that that is not in the interest of Ghana. So that is all that we are.
I'm just wondering what will happen to, say, an MP that will defy your orders. The argument has been bandied around. For instance, we've heard from the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Penyumakin, who says, well, the political party does not have that constitutional control over the MPs because by law, they represent the constituencies and not, per se, the NDC as a political party. So they have their own rights to vote.
I'm sorry, Afenyo got it all wrong. The problem with that type of argument is that he sees NDC sitting somewhere and our MPs also sitting elsewhere. The NDC party include the MPs. So when we take a policy position, it must not be seen as if it is being dictated from headquarters. And because everybody in the party shares that belief. So we don't need to go and coerce people around. The declarations we make is just to assure our followers that, yes, we know we believe in this, and we are assuring the population that we will stand by those principles. It must not be taken that our MPs see themselves as not part of the party, but party is just at Abraka headquarters who cook something and go and run it down the throat.
So what you're saying, for instance, is that in this context, for instance, about the nominees, it wasn't even forced. Your
no. The MPs came here.
You didn't order the MPs around.
No. The MPs came, leadership came, and we sat together, looked at what we consider can be the party position, which is consistent with our philosophies and our core beliefs and so on. And we generated the conclusion together. You understand? So nobody should say, I have heard it being bandied all over the place. Asiedu Nketia is a dictator.
You've ordered
he has ordered the MPs, and Asiedu Nketia, we don't have any problem until we see Asiedu Nketia coming to sit in the gallery and so on. They have no idea what takes place in our party and how our decisions are arrived at. In most of the cases, when something is laid in Parliament, our leadership will come and say that, look, this is an issue which we think, it's a policy issue that touches on our core beliefs. So how do we go about it? And we take those decisions together. So please disabuse your minds from the fact that we have given instructions and we are worried about whether they will be followed or they will not be followed. And you can only be thinking about sanctions that an MP would defy. Why should that MP defy when it is in his interest as well? So it's not like that.
But Chairman, perhaps the reason for which they may be saying that is that this is not the first time you've taken such a decision or directed your MPs to go a certain way. The latest one you've done is that you have issued that directive again to your members of parliament to first of all suspend all of their internal campaignings at the constituency level, suspend that and return to the House. Yes. Make sure that they remain in parliament until the end of the month. That's control, isn't it?
No, but have you tried to find out where that decision came from? It has to be signed by the chief executive of the party. But it doesn't mean that that is a decision of the chief executive of the party, the general secretary. It doesn't mean that.
It's not control?
No, I am saying that you know who initiated that. That move was even initiated from Parliament. Okay?
Right.
And brought to our attention here. And we looked at the issues and decided on the best way forward. Because we have a primaries to run.
Right.
And in the primaries, because we are a democratic party, we allow people to contest, for the seats.
Right.
But we have a responsibility to be fair in our dealings.
And be sure to catch that full interaction with Johnson Asiedu Nketia on all of our social media platforms and also online at myjoyonline.com. But you're still with us here on The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. When we return, we'll talk about the Impact Makers Award. You need to hear about this. We'll tell you about it after this break.